Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm having before you the ZiiGaat Doscinco. So ZiiGaat is a relatively new chi-fi company. They are a house brand of the online retailer Linso. And the Doscinco is one of their latest hybrid IM. It has two dynamic drivers to handle the bass, two balance armature from Sonyon for the mid-range, and a single balance armature from Nose for the treble. I would like to thank Linso for providing this review unit. Everything I said in this video will be my subjective opinion only. So here is the box that the Doscinco comes with, along with everything inside of it. The accessories are very basic. We have a small rectangular case with a few pair of tips inside of it, along with the cable and the IM itself. So ZiiGaat seems to be focusing all of the cost on the IM. Here is the closer look at it. The faceplate seems to have a black background with some bluish glitter dust with many pieces of confetti inside of it. So fit-wise, the Doscinco is on a thicker side, but it is still very comfortable to wear. It doesn't have the rear wing like many other universal shells. So to me, for me, it does take a bit of adjustment and tip rollings to get a decent fit. The isolation is also above average. The cable, on the other hand, feels very basic, simple. It is soft, light, and it gets the job done, but it reminds me of some of the cheaper cable from K-Bear or Suns. So I would actually prefer a slightly thicker and higher quality cable so that it is harder to tangle up. So power and sensitivity wise, the Doscinco is an easy to drive IM, even with a dongle like the Hebe FC6 or the EBZ TP50. The Doscinco already sounded great and it can reach quite a loud volume. However, I think the Doscinco does scale up with stronger sources. So when using the Doscinco with my chord mojo, the bass seems to be opened up more. Like the two dynamic driver now has a little bit more layering and texture to it. So all in all, the Doscinco may not need much to sound good, but it will sound livelier when pairing it with a stronger DAC amp. Onto the sound impression, the Doscinco has a near L-shaped or bassy U-shaped tonality. Upon the first listening session, it is very apparent that the bass is the most dominant factor in the Doscinco tonality. However, the upper mid-range got sufficiently boosted to balance out the bass so that the tonality isn't as dark, nor does the mid-range sound too recessed. With a dual dynamic driver, the bass is big, bold, fun, while still being technical. The sub-bass reaches deep, but the focus shifts more towards the mid-bass due to how harsh slamming and punchy it is. Each bass notes are well separated. It is highly detailed with good texture and a sense of reverb to it. Using Treble by Chameleon and Why So Serious by Hans Zimmer as my bass testing tracks, the bass has great texture with a lot of air movement to it. They do not feel sluggish whatsoever. Turning up to the bass instruments with the song Mighty Downfall by One OK Rock, the drum hit sounds fast and cleanly separated. Even with so many other elements like the guitar riffs, the cymbals, the hi-hats, the main vocalist, I can still easily perceive the hits of the drums. I would have actually wished for the drum to be a bit boomier with more lingering decay to it, but this is just a small nitpick on my part. Overall, the bass of the Doscinco is very satisfying. Onto the mid-range. So even if there was a big amount of low end, there is surprisingly a low amount of bleed. The midrange still sounds clean with decent warmth and coloration to it. Even with the bombastic bass shelf, the vocals don't drown out too much. I mean, it is either that or I'm too used to the bass boot tonality. Male and female vocals don't sound thin, they all sound smooth with very minimal BA timbre, which results in a very little metallic timbre. The male vocals, like Frank Sinatra, still have his classic lush and dance signature. Female vocals like Adele and Celine Dion sounds natural with just enough energy up top and not sounding too shouty. Although with some other vocals, they can sound a bit huskier. Soprano also sounds good. They sound smooth and decently emphasized to the rest of the instruments in the orchestra tracks. Piano and violin also sound natural with more than sufficient note weight to it. The bite, the vibrancy of each bow stroke are beautifully captured with the Doscinco. As for the treble overall sounds very smooth and relaxing. It is well extended, just not the airiest or the sparkliest, nor is it too dark nor bright. The treble on the Doscinco serves more as a complementary factor to the highly boosted low end. Using the tracks Caravan by John Watson, the cymbal strikes and the hi-hats sound smooth, have sufficiently attack and decay to it without sounding too overbearing. The percussion instrument in the treble sounds natural as a whole. Sound stage-wise, I think the Doscinco has a very wide sense of stage to it, but with around average depth and height. I mean, I think this part is highly subjective depending on the person. I think the Doscinco is wide, but still very immersive. So when watching the ending scene of The Lion King in 1994, the background music with their instruments, the rain sound, the vocals, and the roar of Simba gives me goosebumps. I mean, the bass also makes the sound effect more dramatic, but in a good way. Or when I'm listening to a Freeran original soundtrack called the Freeran the Slayer, the chord, the bass drum, the trumpets, and other horn instruments were all given justice with the Doscinco. The layering may not be the most distinct, but the wide sense of stage, I think it makes up to it. With Yosi Horikawa's bubbles and swashers, the Doscinco shows quite a good amount of macro dynamics, but not as good in terms of micro dynamics and macro details. As for comparison, I will compare the Doscinco with two IM. First is the ISN Neo 5, and the second is the Simgot EA1000. So let's start with the Neo 5 first. Both the Neo 5 and the Doscinco are hybrids, but the Neo 5 has a 1+4 configuration with 10mm driver for the bass and 4 balance armature for the mids and treble, as opposed to the 2 dynamic driver for the bass and 3 BA for the mids and treble on the Doscinco. So let's start with the bass. The Neo 5 has a lower bass quality. The bass texture is a bit looser and it feels slower than the Doscinco. However, I think it is actually sounds more organic or more natural than the Doscincos, partly due to the additional lushness that was introduced due to the slower and more lingering sense of bass. The drums and cello sound a bit lusher and warmer. The bass of the Doscinco, on the other hand, is bigger, punchier, and overall more authoritative. It feels more well controlled, edgier and sharper to the attack of the bass notes. The bass line felt more distinct with the Doscinco. As for the mid-range, it would be a bit more difficult to compare. Both of these IEM sounds very natural and warm. Both male and female vocals have that warm coloration to it. The pin again is lower on the Neo 5, but because the bass is also lower, it balances out the pinna. So if I have to nitpick, some female vocals are creamier on the Neo 5, whereas the Doscinco has a bit brighter and more energetic high notes. But the Doscinco are more prone to sibilant, not that it has much sibilant to begin with. Instruments like piano and violin sounds natural on both. Lastly, the treble. Both of these have what I would consider a smooth treble, as in not much peaky. The treble on the Doscinco is sparklier, crunchier, and snappier, whereas the Neo 5 treble has this darker edge to it, more rounded. Like the decaying of the cymbals and hi-hats sounds more polite, more analog, I would say. Both of the treble on this IEM sounds good, by the way, but the Neo 5 would be more suitable for those with treble sensitivity than the Doscinco. Technicality-wise, I think both are surprisingly similar in terms of dimension of the stage, but the layering is not as sharp and distinct on the Neo 5, whereas similar thing also happens for the imaging. So technical performance-wise, I think the Doscinco wins. Next up is the Simgot EA1000. The reason I picked the EA1000 was because how similar the mid-range was on the graph of this IEM. Upon listening in real life, both of these IEM sounds very different. The Doscinco has a way more fun U-shaped tonality as opposed to a more neutral, bright approach of the EA1000. Bass-wise, I think the bass of the Doscinco is way stronger, more prominent and punchier, more forward than the EA1000s. The bass on the EA1000 is leaner, more towards neutral. It feels faster and arguably sounds more technical. It has more 3D sense to it, even with a lower bass quantity, as well as more well controlled due to the passive radiator technology. So one is leaning more towards the bombastic fun, and one is leaning more towards being technical. Mid-range wise, I think the EA1000 sounds more open and transparent, as well as more energetic. The female vocals take more of a frontal stage with the EA1000, as opposed to being more recessed on the Doscinco. Male vocal doesn't have that huskiness feeling to it either. The Doscinco, however, has a smoother mid-range with less metallic and also less shouty. As for the treble, I would pick the treble on the Doscinco any day. It sounds smoother, less picky. The cymbals and hi-hats don't sound as harsh on the Doscinco, especially at the higher volume. Technicality-wise, I think the Doscinco has a wider sense of stage to my ears, although the EA1000 sounds like it has a better layering to it, even with a smaller head stage. Detail retrieval-wise, I think the EA1000 takes the cake. So all in all, if you are looking for a more neutral, more monitoring IEM, I would choose the EA1000. Whereas if I want a more fun, bassy, and more an IEM that is suitable for a chilling listening session, I would pick the Doscinco. So yeah, the ZiiGaat Doscinco. it is an overall very fun yet still technical IM. So the package may be minimal, but the sound performance, I think it does make up for it. If you are looking for a bass focused IM with a smooth upper mid-range, with relaxing treble, also with a wide soundstage for under $300, I think I can recommend the Doscinco. And vice versa, if you are looking for a more neutral sounding IM for monitoring purposes, or IM with a more mid-centric, prioritize on the vocal performance with area treble, I think the Doscinco is not for you. Music library wise, I think the Doscinco is more suitable for the rock, hip hop, and EDM genre. So yeah, that's it for my review, and thank you for watching.